Hi, good morning. Welcome back. Now, after 2 years working on the Harley Sportster project, it's finally on the button, MOT'd and ready to go, and I'm now tentatively looking for the right buyer for it. With the Street Fighter, I bought that back after 4 years out of my ownership, and I gave it a nice makeover, and that's on the button and ready to go. I'm enjoying riding that. And of course, the Hayabusa. After 2 years sat in the corner doing absolutely nothing, that's now on the button, MOT'd and ready to go, and that is so much fun to ride. Now, that means I've taken care of business, completely cleared the decks, and it's time to start a fresh project. And for this one, the victim of choice will be a 2003 Yamaha XJR 1300. Now, personally, these bikes, for me, these are my Eleanor. I absolutely love the XJR 1300. They are a perfect universal Japanese muscle bike. Big block of flats engine, tank, seat, bars, and some style tucked in. These are universal in the way that you can take them on a track day, you can tour them around the world, and you can ride them to work on a Monday morning. They're just like a big Labrador, faithful, powerful, calm, and just reassuring. I love them in every way. I've had 3 in the past. I had a 1200 early model with upside down forks. I had a Kenny Roberts replica, a black and yellow one. And of course, if you watch the channel, I had a turbocharged one with the flame paint job. That was pretty awesome a little while back. But now this one, well, she's completely standard, almost in every way. Okay, with 3 of these bikes behind me in the past, I don't need to repeat those projects. I've had 2 modified ones and 1 absolutely immaculate. I don't need to go there again. They are not itches I need to scratch. So what we're going to do as a project? Well, this channel years ago was founded on maintenance and servicing and scheduled routine stuff that we all need to do. And they are the videos that still endure to this day. So we're going to stick to that for this next project. If you've got a universal Japanese motorcycle, then the coming project will help you in so many ways. We're not just going to do the standard engine servicing, also refurbishment of all the cycle parts as well, and I believe there's going to be quite a lot to do because she's got a wonderful aged old patina, and as much as that looks nice, also it means that under the skin there's going to be a lot of wear and tear, and we need to march through it all one little job at a time until the bike rides like new. So where do we start? Well, as we're going to do stem to stern maintenance and try and make this bike ride like new, I need to inspect everything that is subject to wear and tear, see what state of wear and tear they're in, and if we can improve them, and then from that make a list of parts so I can go shopping and buy everything at once, and then we can start marching through the jobs. So as it starts at the front, let's jack it up and have a close look at the front end first. Interesting number plate screws, as that's cracked. We'll order a number plate. Now, I discovered when I bought this bike that the previous owner had used it for commuting up and down a straight dual carriageway every single day. Now that's good because it means the bike spent many miles in top gear just cruising along. No wear and tear on the transmission. But look, what it's done is it's completely flattened off the centre of the front tyre. And here we go, look at it. That flat section in the middle is literally 1.25 inches wide. And it's absolutely flat with 2 corners on there. So this front tyre, never mind riding like new, it's not even going to ride safely. So the first thing I'm going to put on the list is a front tyre. And while I'm writing that down, let's check the rear. And yep, sure enough, the rear tyre's flattened off as well, which is a real shame because by the looks of it, this tyre has done maybe 1,000 miles, I reckon. It's got masses of tread, but it's got a big flat section right across the middle. Now you might ride through that and enjoy it and be okay and get the mileage out of it, but this bike's about trying to make it ride like new. And again, like the front one, that ain't gonna. So while I'm getting the front, I'll get a rear and we'll treat her to a brand new pair of tyres. Right, brakes. Now, first thing I can see is a little bit of bind on the front wheel. That's not nice, so I think we might have to rebuild the calipers, polish the pistons, new seals, all that old drill. And looking in there as well, the pads in there, they just look to be budget brake pads, nothing special, and they're about halfway through their life. So we'll go for some copper sintered brake pads in the front. We'll rebuild these ISR calipers. They work as best they possibly can. And while we're at it, let's check the rear as well. Right, yep. As expected. Look at the state of that inside piston. It's absolutely hell on earth in there. Look, calipers that are underslung, they get the water sitting inside them and that always corrodes bad like that. So there we are, state of that. I think we'll have that caliper itself apart and we'll polish the piston up, put new seals in it, and again some nice copper sintered pads as well, so the rear works as well as the front. So 3 sets of brake pads, 3 sets of rebuild seals. Right, next check, headstock bearings. Easiest way to check them, get the front wheel up with the bike upright, grab the bottom of the forks and give it a bit of muscle backwards and forwards that way first of all, and there is just a tiny little bit of play there. Not much, it's barely any, but I can feel it moving at the bottom. Also, when I turn the bars, there's no notch there, but it's very slack. And it could be that 6 months' time, 5,000 miles from now, that's going to start a notch in the centre, and they are pretty much. They're not worn out yet, but they're worn. So I think what we'll do while we're doing all this, we'll stick a set of headstock bearings in it. They don't cost much, and it's not a long job. So there we are, headstock bearings on the list as well. Right, now while I'm going to be looking at the headstock bearings, the whole front end will be apart. So let's check the wheel bearings while we're at it. They seem to be okay. There doesn't seem to be any play there at all that I can feel. But headstock bearings, there's no real notch. They're not really worn out, but they are worn. You can feel the wear in them, and I'm sure the same wear is in the front wheel bearing as well. So let's do a set of front wheel bearings while we're doing the headstock bearings. And while we're doing that, let's check the rear wheel bearings as well, because it follows that they could be worn too. Right, rear. That's odd. Weird. That's odd. There's a bit of play there. Ooh. There's a lot of play there. And even more obviously from this side. Watch the chain run at the bottom. That side swing arm bearing feels like it's completely collapsed. Look at that. Huge amounts of side to side movement in the swing arm shaft. Not closer. All right, clear to see. There's a huge amount of tail wag play in the swinging arm, and it's this side that moves, not the other side. So it's this bearing in the left that has collapsed, and you can see the movement in there. It's huge. Now, here's the thing. When I was riding it back from picking the bike up, there was a little bit of a weird feeling from acceleration to overrun, where the swinging arm is twisting one way under load and then twisting the other way when you shut the throttle. So the back end's doing that as you're going on and off the power. So clearly, we need some swinging arm bearings on the list. That's it. Right, as we're going to be taking the entire back end out, including the swing arm, to replace the bearings, are we going to replace the old chain and sprockets back in again? No, probably not. Let's just check if it's worn out. If you want to do that, the easiest way, clean off some of the chain gunk, because that hides a multitude of sins, and see if it's rusty underneath. If it's really rusty, then yep, replace it. This one isn't too bad, but let's see if it's actually worn. Simplest way to do that, grab the chain on the back of the sprocket at kind of 3 o'clock and pull it towards you. And if in pulling it towards you, it tightens up the slack in the chain like that, like this one is, that's clearly worn, because it means that in between all the pins and sprocket teeth here, there's a little bit of play, and you can see that by when you pull it, it tightens the chain up. So yes, this chain of sprockets is pretty worn, so we'll put that on the list as well. Right, while I've got eyeballs in this area, the first thing that's glaring me in the face is this. These shocks have got not just the powder coat flaking off the springs and the springs are rusty. That's probably an MOT fail, I imagine, and also they're leaking. There's oil all over them. Both shocks are shot. So I need a new pair of shocks. Now, can't afford YSS shocks for this, but I have got an idea. I can replace these with something perfectly suitable for the job. So I'll just put replace shocks on the list. Now, naturally, we're going to do an engine service on this. So fluids, filters, plugs, valve clearances, all the usual suspects, which means ordering a service kit. Standard stuff, all the suppliers are doing them now. You get all the oils you need, all the filters you need, set of plugs, all the little bits and pieces like O-rings and seals, all in one big box for a discounted price. Loads of companies doing it. Now, before I do that, I've got to take note of this, because this is a modification. This is a high flow 202 canister filter, and they don't have these. Normally, they have the flat casing with a bolt in the middle. You take the bolt out, take the casing off, and inside it is a little paper pleated filter. That's normally your oil filter on an XJR from the factory. And this spin-on canister filter is an upgrade. You buy an adapter that bolts to the engine, and then you spin on a metal canister when you want to change your oil. It makes it easier and quicker, and it aids regular servicing. So apart from the fact that when I order my service kit, I've got to make sure I order a high flow 202, which I think is a Honda filter, easiest to get still. And also it tells me that the bike has been regularly serviced, because if someone's taken the trouble to make a modification to make it easier to service, it shows that it's been regularly serviced. They're taking measures to make it easier to do so. So that's good integrity. I'm happy with that. So let's stick an HF202 on the list. Now this is a standard XJR problem. These rubber gaskets that go on the valve cover. If you're going to do valve clearances, very often you can reuse these rubber gaskets because they're quite thick and chunky, but they inevitably leak along this front edge as this one's doing. So I'll order a new rubber gasket, and when you fit it with some clear silicone, very, very tiny amount underneath, and you can seal them up if you take care. So we'll get a new one of those while we're at it. Right, now these bikes are renowned for the torque in the engine, and they really are very silky smooth. One of the things obviously therefore that could wear is the clutch. Now this one's fine, it doesn't slip, I didn't experience any of that, but then I didn't push the bike that hard either. So as we're replacing everything else, all the other friction linings and seals, then why don't we do the clutch as well? I'll order myself a set of fibres and a set of steel plates and a gasket for the cover as well, and we'll replace the clutch at the same time, because I really do want this bike to ride like new, and I think that will be a great contributor to that. So let's stick it on the list. Now finally, throttle cables. Now as I want the bike to ride like new, the throttle doesn't feel like that at all. It really is nasty. It feels all chewy and stiff with a bit of a hang in the middle when you let it go. So it's the cables. They're 20 years old, 40,000 miles. There's going to be moisture in there that's corroded the inner core. So just replace them. They're not expensive. You shouldn't just replace throttle cables when they break. Obviously that strands you wherever you are, and they feel like they ain't going to last forever. So I'll put a new set of them. They're about £25, and while we're at it, we'll do a new choke cable as well, because they're about literally 10 quid. That's not expensive. And then all the control cables will be new. And at the same time, while I'm dealing with the handlebars, we'll do a complete rebuild on the clutch and brake master cylinders as well. You can get kits for them, and again, they're not expensive. So we'll add all that stuff to the list as well, and that will conclude at least the initial shopping list to be going on with. Right, now thankfully I bought this lovely old girl at the right price so that I've got enough budget left to afford all the parts that I knew I was going to need. Not just the big things like tyres and chains and sprockets and the obvious stuff, but the little peripheral things that inevitably add up. I've been doing this long enough to know that these lists get out of control if you're not careful. That lot there alone already, with the tyres included, is about £800, and that's how much it can be. So if you're going to do a project yourself and you buy a cheap old bike, make sure you've got enough left over out of your budget to afford to be able to do the project itself and see it all the way through to the end and ride it up the road. But you know that anyway. Anyway, I'm going to order these parts. The first job will be the swing arm bearings. I think that's the most pressing task, and also it's quite deep inside the bike. We'll rip the whole back end out in the next video, provided the parts have arrived, and I can replace those, and we'll start rebuilding it bit by bit as we go along. Anyway, that's it for today. Thanks for watching. Take it easy.
Ride safe, and we'll see you next time.